Are we ready? All right. Good evening and welcome to our February 13th HWMA meeting. I will go ahead and take roll. We have our new Vice Chair, Director Louis Lusso.
Here.
And Director Castellano.
Here.
Director Katie.
Here.
And we have an alternate for Director Bushmel. We have Director Bone.
Yep.
And Director Wilson.
Yes.
And I'm here. So let's go. Next thing on the agenda is our consent calendar. Do we have any public comment on the consent calendar before we take a vote? Okay, there. Approve the minutes from the January 9th Board of Directors meeting. Approve the November 2024 financial reports. Approved request for bids for the purchase of gas extraction system analyzer and control upgrades. Does anybody want to pull anything? All right.
I move approval of this consent calendar.
I'll second the motion.
All right. We have a motion by Director Castellano and a second by Director Katie. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Wonderful. Let's move on to oral and written communication. Do we have any public comment this evening? Is there anybody on Zoom?
Seeing none.
All right. Well, then let's move on to item number 4, which is approved request for proposal for organics processing feasibility study. And can we get a staff report, please?
Thank you, Chair. So we touched on this quite a bit at our November board meeting, but I'm going to go over a little bit of a truncated version from that meeting with some high-level aspects regarding the RFP. So this is going to be a brief overview. We are going to touch on the general purpose and the intent of this RFP. We will go over the mainline goals of the RFP from a high-level perspective. Then we will touch on the timeline of the RFP process. And finally, we will walk through a truncated version of the critical pathway for the RFP and its deliverables. The purpose of this RFP is pretty straightforward. Its main goal is to produce a study that will look at the feasibility of implementing organics processing that will include food waste into the current waste management system we have here in the county and at HWMA. This is going to be the first step in bringing this type of processing facility to the area. And obviously, this entire RFP and the processing facility is driven by the 1383 regulations that we see today. In concert with the main goal of the RFP, I will briefly touch on some of the other high-level goals and deliverables we can expect to come out of this process. Well, this is not all-inclusive. This hits on the larger points at hand. The study developed will touch on future plans, including population growth, potential changes in collection methodology, while taking a look at the current infrastructure that is already in place. It will also focus on financial outlooks relating to the facility and its preparation, and provide models for costs, along with approaches to altering or modifying the current waste management fee structure to ensure costs are covered correctly and to mitigate the need for subsidies from the solid waste tipping fee. Additionally, it will assess potential feedstock materials along with regulatory requirements and potential end-use products. And along with that, we will look at potential material markets for those end-use products. So this is the critical pathway for the RFP and the beginning stages of planning for the potential facility. The first step was for this board to receive the first draft of the RFP at their November meeting. Staff then circulated this document to member agency staff and held a meeting with them to go over edits and comments received by that staff. HWMA staff has incorporated necessary changes and edits to the document received from member agency staff and presents the final draft document here this evening for approval. For the RFP, all proposals, once released, will be received by April 7th. The HWMA Evaluation Committee will recommend a proposer to this board at their May meeting. Once a successful proposer has been chosen, staff will begin contract negotiations and return to this board no later than the June meeting for final agreement approval. Once approved, staff is hopeful work can begin on or before July of 2025. Additionally, staff anticipates the work to potentially take up to 1 year, but will update the board as needed with a more extensive update at the halfway mark taking place in January of 2026. Staff is hopeful that the work can be completed by no later than June of 2026, with the final report being presented to the board at their July 2026 meeting. At this time, with the knowledge gleaned from the report, they can provide direction to staff to move forward with an in-county processing facility and with more specific goals and timelines for staff to work for. Should the board provide direction and wish to move forward with development of the facility, we are hopeful that staff will begin in fiscal year 26-27 on development of the in-county organics processing facility. Additionally, the board should keep in mind, though at this time, these dates on the latter half of this pathway are tentative and subject to change. And finally, this brings us to the recommended action. Staff recommends that the board approve the request for proposal for organics processing feasibility study and authorize its release on February 17th, 2025. And as always, staff would be more than happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right, I'll open it up.
So are this has been going on for so long, are the proposals for the collection, or is that going to be handled by the contractor now, or is this just for the processing?
This is just for the processing facility. Collection would be handled through the various franchise agreements with each jurisdiction. So currently, HWMA is not involved in the negotiations outside of the city of Ferndale for any type of franchise collection contracts.
Okay, and then the other thing is will this play into maybe prompting? I know quite a few of the dairies and through the USDA are talking about putting in digesters. Would they be able to up their size and use that for a collection point?
So we have had conversations with a couple dairies in the South about potentially utilizing some of our feedstock. So I know that they can't run digesters just off dairy manure. They would need some of our food waste. We have had preliminary talks with that, but as of right now, we haven't committed to anything. And as far as I know, none of those projects have gotten more than a potential feasibility or planning stage.
There are a couple that are a lot closer, and if we could make the commitment that if you go a little bit farther, we will give you a certain amount to drive that bullet, it may add to the to them actually providing the service. I don't know, but that's, you guys will figure that out, I guess. I'm just a one-shot wonder tonight.
I would be more than happy to reach out and meet with any of those potential individuals. It's something that staff is continuously monitoring, but obviously we can't be everywhere at once. But if you can get us in contact with that, I'd be more than happy to discuss that.
Let's just one question and one brief comment. I'm imagining you have a list of, potential folks to send this out to already. Great. And just to Director Bone's question, one of the things we ensured was included in this was the idea of exploring partnerships as part of the feasibility study. And so I think any successful proposal would be kind of looking at the landscape, looking at incoming industries, what's happening, and and I'm sure that staff is already considering that could make its way into a proposal as well.
So I know that we gave some feedback at the last meeting. Is there anything from the member agencies that really stood out that made it on here as a change?
So one of the items that Director Castellano brought up was the potential search for physical properties within the county. That was one of the main issues and points that member agency staff and HWMA staff talked about. And we went back and forth and we settled on not requesting in the feasibility study to find actual parcels, but to better define the requirements of those parcels. So the potential size, the shape, the zoning, permitting, things like that. So that way, after the feasibility study, we should get back a myriad of things, one of those being parcel requirements, and that would give us the ability to better hone in, whether that's through a realtor or other channels and means, to hone in on potential properties that we could permit for this type of facility. So that was one of the main points that member agency staff looked at. There's also some ancillary items in here. Small composting facilities, so backyard composting as well. They want to make sure that we don't isolate those out of the structure as a whole. That was also a very big thing, especially from a couple of the jurisdictions, that they want to make sure that the small local composters and the backyard composters as well are not isolated out of the process.
Thanks. I know that was a big conversation in Arcata, so I appreciate that. Does anybody else? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, does the outcome of this study affect what the actual haulers or the agencies are going to be able to negotiate with the jurisdictions?
That's difficult for me to weigh in on because I'm not tacitly involved with directly negotiating those contracts. But as of right now, there's no contract in Humboldt County to pick up food waste. That does not exist. We're still working out the kinks. We're still working out how we're going to pick that up. And this feasibility study is hopefully going to give us a better idea of what the long-term planning in Humboldt County is. We had the short-term planning, which was to potentially utilize HWMA's old recycling center as a processing facility to send it out of county. Obviously, we've hit some roadblocks in that, mainly some of on the collection end. But we still need to take a look at the future of what organics is going to look like. So it goes hand in hand. This is not going to tell the jurisdictions how to negotiate their contracts and how to pick it up. But the feasibility study will tell us maybe some of the best methodologies. That doesn't mean that we always have to go that direction. But as far as collection, there's only so many ways this type of material can be collected. And either way, at the end of this feasibility study, we should be able to tell you what is going to be best for each jurisdiction, if that makes sense.
So I guess I'll ask the question that I think comes up every time we talk about organics, but as far as the timeline goes, is this are we still behind? Are we going to be penalized for taking so long?
So again, I know I probably sound like a broken record for this question, but I can't comment on penalties. Obviously, HWMA is not the one who has to be in compliance. The jurisdictions are. Obviously, we're working towards this goal with the jurisdictions to ensure compliance down the road. My own personal opinion, I find it hard to believe that Cal Recycle, because we are showing efforts, all jurisdictions currently, I find it hard to believe that Cal Recycle is going to come up here and penalize, especially some of the smaller jurisdictions. But I would greatly encourage you to ask your staff about your cap if it is a concern. The smaller jurisdictions, you don't need to be nearly as concerned until 2027. But the larger jurisdictions, you have a cap. If you talk to staff and ask them what is in your cap, you'll get a better understanding of maybe the pathway that your jurisdiction is looking at.
All right, I'll open it up for public comment, and then we can come back to directors. Does anybody have any public comment on this item? Anybody on? Is there anybody on Zoom? Oh,
We do.
awesome.
Evan Edgar Associates, offices in Sacramento and Eureka, California. And Eric is spot on with regards to substantial effort with regards to the jurisdictions and what's in your climate action, corrective action plan. But you guys are making a substantial effort, and for smaller jurisdictions remote, I think Cal Recycle will understand, and this RFP goes a long way. I do plan to submit on the RFP and probably team with a local planning engineering firm to get some of the local costs down on how to construct local compost facilities and where to put it. And so I will probably team in with another local team. And the only question I have, Eric, is kind of important, is on that pre-proposal conference on March 3rd through the 6th. Is that mandatory, or can you do it by Zoom?
Thank you so much for your comments, and I will bring it back to the board. Does anybody have a comment? Or I will entertain a motion, I suppose.
Just for the benefit of the public, Director Keller-Huckman, would you mind answering that question?
It will not be mandatory.
Okay, thanks.
Does somebody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the request for proposals for organics processing feasibility study and authorize staff to release on February 17th, 2025.
I'll second that.
All right, and all in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, motion passes. Thank you. And let's move on to item number 5, which is to review and approve revision of policy 2105.1.1 in lieu benefits. Can we have a staff report, please?
Thank you, Chair. I will defer to Director Schwartz.
Thank you. The authority offers all employees the opportunity to enroll in group health benefits pursuant to the HWMA policy 2105. We currently offer in lieu benefits for qualified employees who choose to opt out of the authority's group coverage. And the authority has used a variety of compliant methodologies for calculating these payments for employees who opt out. Staff sought the advice of an employment attorney and a human resources consultant, and following that process determined that it would benefit both the authority and the employees to simplify the methodology for calculating in lieu benefits to a flat rate of $400 per month. Adopting this revised flat rate methodology would bring the authority's in lieu benefits policy into alignment with other member agencies and also simplify budget estimates for this line item expense.
Sounds reasonable. Do we have any questions?
Make a motion for staff's recommendation.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any public comment before we go back for a vote? All right, all in favor of this motion?
Aye.
Aye. All right, motion passes. Let's move on to item number 6, receive and approve mid-year adjustments and review for fiscal year 24-25. And can we have a staff report?
Thank you, Chair. Staff is pleased to present the fiscal year 24-25 mid-year budget review for the board's consideration. The mid-year budget generally reflects actual expenses and revenues as received by the authority as of December 31st of that fiscal year. And is a strong indicator of the financial course of the authority, and additionally will help guide staff in the development of the upcoming fiscal year 25-26 budget. Overall, revenues are in line with budgeted projections, with expenditures coming in just slightly under the budgeted as presented in April. The variations in revenue and certain expenses are simply due to the timing of this report and the delay of certain financial processes. Overall, staff is confident with the projections made with the fiscal year 24-25 budget as far as revenues are concerned as a whole. Expenditures, the authorities approved expenditures are tracking as well, outside of 2 instances, merchant fees and landfill leachate hauling. The increased merchant fees are directly related to an increase in online bill pay and credit card payments through our transaction providers. The authority, for most of its time, has been a cash and check business, but since the COVID-19 pandemic, staff has continued to edify the financial structures to accept a variety of payments. This has reduced staff time related to managing cash and checks while making paying bills more user-friendly for all of our customers. We have seen a large uptick in customer participation so far this year by introducing online and email bill pay. Leachate hauling increase is directly correlated to an increase in rainfall experienced at the landfill when compared to historical levels. One other item that's tracking a little bit above projections is R&M facilities. We currently have operations staff taking a look at potential projects that we had on the books that can be delayed or held off until the next fiscal year to ensure that we don't need to make any significant adjustments and continue to have a remainder of funds should any other facility repairs and maintenance issues come up. So additionally, staff presents the following requested changes with references to the visions and the line. $25,000 increase to the landfill leachate hauling from landfill engineering and consulting services, and then a $22,000 increase to the administrative merchant fees. For the merchant fees, staff recommends pulling these needed funds from the current budgeted solid waste transportation and disposal. These costs are currently tracking under the budget due to a realized reduction in fuel costs compared to what's budgeted. So staff recommends that the board approve list of proposed adjustments and approve the fiscal year 24-25 mid-year budget.
All right, I'll bring it to the board for any questions. All right, do we have any public comment?
Seeing none.
I move the approval of the list of proposed adjustments and approve the fiscal year 2024-25 mid-year budget.
Second. Sorry.
All right, we have a motion by Director Castellano and a second from Director, remind me of your name. Louis Lusso. Excellent. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion passes. And let's move to, anybody from the board have anything to report? All right, what about Executive Director? Anything?
Not this time, Chair.
Well, then I believe we are about to move into closed session. Closed session, so let's do that. There's a quorum in the room. Okay, we are back from closed session, and there is nothing to report out, and I will go ahead and adjourn this meeting. Have a great evening.
Drive safely, everybody.